All right, today we're doing something a little different, something pretty fascinating. We're going to be documenting a market DNA cycle for the US100 asset. This means we get a front row seat to see how this proprietary geometric system works in action. So let's dive right in. So before we get into the charts, just a quick but really important heads up. What we're doing here is a documentary-style observation. We are simply narrating the events as they unfold, phase by phase, based on the information we've been given. We're not doing any of our own analysis. And just to be perfectly clear on that, our role here is to document. We're following the market DNA method step by step. So everything you're about to hear and see is based strictly on the source material provided to us. Now, the asset at the heart of all this is the US100 index. That's the financial instrument we'll be tracking through this cycle. And here's what makes this so interesting. We're jumping into a cycle that's already in motion. We get to see the model being applied in a real-time environment. But remember, our observation is based only on the data right here in front of us. Okay, with that foundation set, let's get into the action. We're kicking things off with phase 1. This is called the plan, and it's where the entire setup for the cycle is laid out from the very beginning. And here is where it all begins. Think of this chart as the starting gun for the whole process. The cycle officially kicks off the second the price hits that primary entry level. You can see it right there on the chart, labeled with an M. Now, these are the key parameters that really define the plan. The model identifies two potential entry points. The main one is M at 24,244.2, and there's a secondary level, PC, at 23,680.9. It also lays out a trapezoid time duration of 61 days and something called the third triangle domain of 5.44%. All of these are going to be crucial inputs for the risk calculations we're about to look at. So now that we have the plan, let's talk about managing risk. These parameters were all set right at the start of the cycle. They're specifically designed to manage any potential downsides from the get-go. To make this tangible, the model's risk calculation is based on a hypothetical amount of capital. For this example, that amount is $100,000. And for this hypothetical scenario, the investor has set their expected maximum drawdown. They've decided that limit is 5%. Okay, so you take all those inputs and the model calculates a position size of 0.19. This single number is what determines how much is at stake for each of the two potential trades in the plan. So you might be wondering, how exactly does the model come up with that number? Well, the source material tells us very clearly, and I'm going to read this directly. Both trade sizes are calculated using the hypothetical capital, the investor's maximum allowed drawdown, the third triangle domain percentage, the risk coefficient, and the contract size. So it's a formula that brings all those key factors together. And this is where we get to see the potential outcomes that the plan laid out. Let's look at scenario 1. If only that first entry at M gets triggered, the expected profit is about $2,300, which projects to an annualized return of 13.76%. But if both entries get triggered, as in scenario 2, well, the potential profit could double to over $4,600 with a projected annual return of 27.64%. All right, now this is where it gets really interesting. The cycle has moved on from that initial plan. It has now hit a key event, which the model identifies as phase 3. This slide gives us a fantastic before and after view. On the left, you've got the chart right at the start of phase 1, and on the right, you can see how the price has actually moved since then. This is the journey that led us to the completion of phase 3. So what actually happened here? Well, the price reached a point called Apex N at 24,901. But here's the crucial part. It did that before it ever touched the mirror delay or that secondary entry level P of C. This means the cycle followed an alternative path, one that didn't align with scenario 2 from our plane. And that brings us right up to the present moment. Phase 3 is officially complete. This leaves us with a fascinating question that's presented right in the source material. Now that phase 3 is done, will the cycle's next phase actually be phase 2? That's quite a turn of events, isn't it? Okay, before we wrap this up, a few very important disclaimers we need to cover. Please remember, this is not financial advice. The documentation states that leverage above 10 is prohibited by the model. It's also critical not to invest essential personal funds. This analysis is purely for public model documentation. And finally, any risk management must strictly follow the user's own instructions.